Muy buenas tardes, amigos. Les saluda Rodolfo Campollo desde Guatemala, gerente de cuenta para Centroamérica. Bienvenidos a las sesiones de la tarde, luego ya de nuestro excelente foro que estuvimos ahí atendidos por Juan Pablo. Muy buenos temas, muy buena colaboración de todos nuestros amigos. En esta sesión de la tarde estaremos hablando de los alcances del audio usando el enfoque de diseñado para desaparecer que maneja Sonance. Muchas marcas hemos oído de audio que lo que tratan de hacer es una mezcla, que el audio, la tecnología de audio se mezcle con la arquitectura y el diseño. Sonance va un paso más adelante y no quiere que se mezcle, quiere que desaparezca. De ahí viene el slogan Design to Disappear, diseñado para desaparecer. El día de hoy con nosotros, de parte de Sonance, nos acompaña el señor Jay Lazaro, junto con Jason Sloan y Mike Cleary. Nos estarán apoyando el día de hoy con unas excelentes presentaciones. Los vamos a dejar entonces ahí con Jay para que empiecen. Jay, please go ahead. Thank you very much for your time, guys.
Thank you, Rodolfo. I wanted to just thank the Polaris team for putting on this event today. Rodolfo, can you hear me okay? See me okay? All right, good.
Yes, sir. Everything okay?
So appreciate everybody participating today, and we're delighted to be speaking with everybody for the next 4.5 hours. We have about 175 slides to go through on our keynote presentation. Of course, I'm kidding. But what we wanted to focus in on today was, first of all, just to say hello to everybody. A couple of my distinguished colleagues are from the Sonance studio in San Clemente. And we're going to be showing you some products later today from our studio. But the message of our overall presentation today, at least in the first part, is the importance of outreach, to the design community, architects and designers. It's fundamental to what we believe, whether it's Sonance, whether it's James Loudspeaker, iPort, TrueFig, all of the things that we do with those brands narrow down to designing products to disappear. And that's fundamentally something that if we can create that environment for architects and designers, will help you as integrators and dealers become more important in the design team, as well as provide value on how to make their the architects and designers projects better, how to make their projects better. One of the things that we always like to do is start off with our pillars, which will help define what we talk about further throughout this presentation. Jason, since you're standing in front of the pillars, would you just mind reiterating what our values and our pillars are?
Absolutely, thank you, Jay. So at Sonance, which incorporates James Loudspeaker, our iPort brand, and TrueFig, we believe in 3 very fundamental things. First and foremost, our company has a long and very strong heritage of innovation. I'm sorry, it's on this side. That heritage of innovation started the company in 1982 with the introduction of really the first architectural loudspeaker that was available for the market. As co-founders of the CEDIA organization, our company has grown along with CEDIA, but along the way, we've really strived to make sure that we do things that have not been done before, really focused around a couple of the other pillars that are very important to us. This idea of authentic partnerships. Since the inception of the business in 1982, our founders, who still own the business today, believe that our strongest asset is the relationship that we have to earn each and every day with our customers. And our partnership hopefully extends beyond just product, which is why today we've come to you with this message of outreach to architects, interior designers, lighting designers, because we believe you can take the products that we make and the strategy that's employed behind them to that very influential design community, and thereby affect your future product pipeline and the amount of design-centric products that you can specify for every project. Finally, and maybe most importantly, you're going to hear about a presentation that we've entitled Design to Disappear. That's the 3rd pillar of our company, and candidly, probably the most important. When you talk about design, it can take many different shapes and form factors. For our company, what we strive to do every day is to design products that are meant or intended to disappear into very refined environments. And so that really kind of sets the stage to talk about exciting products like invisible loudspeakers or James loudspeaker entire portfolio of product. But make no mistake, all of those give us a vehicle to reach the design community. And that's what this first segment is going to focus on. Jay.
Great. I'm going to I'm going to put up the keynote presentation and talk a little bit about outreach in general. So Rafa, or Rodolfo, can you see my screen?
Yes, Jay, we can see your screen. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. One of my colleagues, Mike Cleary, who you saw with the distinguished green shirt on, he and I've had plenty of opportunity to travel out into many parts of the world to give outreach presentations. So let's just kind of create a couple of quick definitions. Outreach is the fundamental.
Jay, just one comment. We can see your whole screen, not the presentation mode.
Okay. Yeah, I just
okay.
I'm going to move up and down and back and forth within those slides. So my intent is to not launch the entire presentation, but you can see the main screen. So outreach really
define. It would be a 4-hour meeting. So thanks for doing that, Jay.
What's that?
I said otherwise it would be the 4-hour meeting. So thank you for helping.
Yeah. First of all, whatever it is you believe that enhances your business opportunity in your marketplace, you heard Jason say it, since 1982, we fundamentally believe in designing products to disappear. And the way that we go about to market is we don't advertise in trade magazines that much. We don't advertise to the public. What we do is we advertise through outreach by speaking about our craft and what our belief system is to architects and designers. So we fundamentally believe that if you're in the industry that we exist in, this is your #1 path and focus point, or should be the strongest consideration of how you go to market, is by reaching out to trade partners. Trade partners could be architects, designers, lighting designers, even electrical contractors and other construction trades. It's all important to define how to educate the space of technology that we exist in today. So I wanted to just put up this statement here, and this comes from our CEO. And I think if there's one thing you can take away from this next half hour or 40 minutes of time we are together is we believe success is achieved in outreach when you teach the architect and design community what we do. What we have seen is when you try to teach them how what we do or offer helps them do what they do better, you have a greater partnership and a tighter group of organization when you start to work on projects together. If you fundamentally take this idea and go to the trade partners within your marketplace, teach them how what we do helps them do what they do better, we feel like you'll have an achieved amount of success that way, because it's not about enhancing the devices and things like that you put into the projects. It's enhancing the design that the architect or designer is trying to carry out for the homeowner, and complement that by inevitably designing products to disappear. So this is the one statement that we truly feel is the importance of outreach. We've been making presentations to design communities and architect groups for years, and we've learned a lot about what not to do. And if you can really focus in on this message right here, we feel that you'll achieve greater success in creating those partnerships or strengthening the ones that you already have. Before we get into the highlights of this CEU, it's an acronym in our industry called a continuing education unit. This is kind of an agnostic presentation that's used in Europe, not necessarily the United States. But I wanted to just call out Mike Cleary for a moment to maybe talk about some best practices, knowing that at least for this year, I would say that we're mostly going to be giving these opportunities of education through virtual experiences or Zoom experiences. Mike, do you care to elaborate for a moment?
Sure. Thanks, Jay. And Rodolfo, I'm gonna ask for your help as well here. I'm seeing a wonderful number of 45 participants, so thank you for joining us. Could I ask for some group participation in the chat window? If you could just drop a note, either for the whole group or maybe to Rodolfo, but the idea of where do your projects come from and who influences them? So if you are saying, out of all the jobs I do each year, 99% of the time I'm dealing directly with the homeowner, let us know in the chat. If it's, hey, we have a builder or an architect or a developer that's bringing us opportunities, let us know. And sometimes it's a design professional. My thought was, if you can give us some chat feedback, we can kind of guide some of the Q&A and some of these points to those different audiences. But that would be my recommendation. If you have a homeowner who's making decisions and they happen to be involved and in love with technology, you have it made, right? You can present a technology idea, they're going to say yes because they're into it personally. So if that's the customer base, you may not go down this path, but I would say if there's someone other than the homeowner influencing the job, so this might be the architect who is deciding for you what can be seen and what has to be hidden. Well, now we need to appeal to that influencer just as much as the homeowner, or maybe even more than the homeowner. And so my take on that would be whoever's going to affect what gets approved and what gets cut, use this to your strength. If you have a homeowner who has all the money to afford everything you sell, but has no personal interest in technology, then design might actually be the best way to establish the budget. Because if the architect is selecting marble from Italy and wood from South America, and right, all these material selections are being done, well, now paying attention to the lights, paying attention to the actual finish on the wall, all of these things is probably higher value to the homeowner than to a speaker or a subwoofer. So understanding the audience and what makes them excited or engaged into the project is going to be the starting point for sure. I think if I'm calling on architects or dealers, if I'm Mike Cleary Audio Video and I'm trying to build a network, it's hard for me to call up a high-end builder or a high-end architect group and say, I have a new projector I want to come show you, because they probably don't care about the lumens or the image quality. But if I show up with the idea of, I want to play a speaker for you that can go into the wall and you can cover it with wallpaper or with wood veneer and show an invisible speaker, or show a speaker grill made out of wood that can go into the ceiling. Now we're talking design language, not technical specs. So err on the side of design finishes and leave out some of the industry vocabulary that we can all speak when we're talking about audio. But the more generic or the more agnostic and plain the language we use, I think the more people will understand. I made the mistake on the other way, so I'm speaking from experience of what not to do. That I would say learn from my mistakes for sure.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike, is captivate your audience, right? Keep them engaged and ask them early on where their projects come from. Ask them, you know, what are the types of things that influence their business, so that you get buy-in from the get-go. I think perhaps if it's on a Zoom call or a webinar or GoToMeeting, ask the audience to stay in front of the video camera. Ask them to commit to that time with you on the call to be front and center, so that you as a presenter can read, you know, your guests' you know, emotions and see if there's reactions or things you need to speed up or things you need to slow down, because sometimes it's all about reading your audience, and you have an even greater challenge when you do that via a format like this. So that was one of the things that my takeaways is that Mike, from you and I talking the other day, is just keeping people engaged. I think obviously some of these things we'll be doing from keynotes and presentations and things like that, but I also know that when you do these live, you're a big fan of like props and hand samples and things like that.
Yeah, let me grab one.
Sure. Being able to carry visual aids with you so that you can inspire your audience to think more about the types of products that they're looking at versus the projects that they might be working on helps inspire thought and keep them further engaged in the presentation. The reality is that you've got a lot of work to do to keep people interested throughout the phone call. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in person is much better, of course, right? Because we have the relationship connection. But I have heard of a few folks doing virtual presentations, and if the group that they're presenting to is a true important influencer, shipping a hand sample ahead of time. So in this case, this is a James loudspeaker finish board, and of course we're showing this idea of if we have lighting with a bezel, then showing what that might look like. It could be, of course, circle or square. If we have lighting that's flush, showing the idea that we can have audio that literally gets flushed into the ceiling boards. And of course, we're showing both white and then a custom paint to match the tone of the space, the wood grill, and then the custom wood routed area. So these are nice to really articulate everything going on. You can see the James loudspeaker logo that's been engraved on top, and the Polaris team can help you source these. But this is a nice way, whether it's a leave behind or maybe it's even you send it ahead and then you can reference it during the virtual meeting. I think that's important. The other thing that is helpful is if in particular, and we'll get to this in the presentation, but if there's a lighting designer or if there's lighting that's being selected on the project, understanding if someone's putting money and time into a round trim versus a square trim, being able to articulate that you can work with the size, shape, and trim of the different materials and components in that space. So physical hand samples would be one of my pro tips for sure.
Cool. I think the other thing, Mike, you and I talk about is literature and leave behinds. And I think our message to you is we are always trying to carry around beautiful cuts of material and literature and documents. And our suggestion to you is hold on to those. The moment you lay those down on a desk in front of somebody in the presentation, they open it up and they start surfing through pages, you've lost them. You've lost them with the intent of what you're speaking them to. So we just posted in the chat our Sonance specification guide. This is a great tool to send or leave behind towards the end of your presentation. Hold these tools towards the end of your meeting so that you get the goals, the talking points that you have across the goal line.
I think it's also important to stop and ask questions and make sure that we don't just keep going. So in order to practice good habits, and if there's nothing, it's okay. But Rodolfo, has there been any either comments, questions, or feedback on the chat that you might want to inject into the conversation?
Yes, Mike. Indeed, Mr. Tomas Wing from Panama City just give us some of his experience within where does their projects come, and he says he's sharing with us 60% of their business comes from end users and customers, and 40% of the business is coming from specifiers, architects, or designers. Thank you very much, Thomas, for your input. Anyone else that wants to share how this mix is composed in your business, please go ahead and share it in the chat.
And for that 60% where it's directly to the customer, my guess is a good percentage of those are probably referrals or friends of someone that you've done previous work for. So in that case, you have an advocate built in, right? In the case of the 40% coming from the design community, this is where you'll have to be specific to figure out what's important to that audience. And then Jay is going to walk us through a few ideas on how to build importance to that message.
Yeah, sure. Thomas Wing, just is 100% in accordance with you. Thank you, Mike.
Great. Thank you.
So what you should see on my screen here is our CPD course called Design to Disappear. And it's structured and chaptered in very specific ways because in some parts of the world, you have to adhere to standard and present this agnostically. But what we wanted to do was highlight the areas of how the presentation's effective and where there's opportunities to insert ways to talk about your business. Remember, what we believe is that you should try to help the designers become better at what they do and focus in on how the products and solutions that we provide and you provide enhance what they do. So in the first part of this keynote slide, this is where you want to tee up things about your business. If it doesn't say Sonance or PolarisControls or James Loudspeaker, maybe it says, you know, IQ Home or any of the dealers that we have on here, and introducing who is presenting this presentation, where it's coming from. Secondly is we encourage you to throw up what your belief systems are. You know, we had Jason talk about our 3 pillars, but you should very much tell your audience why you're doing what you do and what you believe and how you might be able to stay in contact with them. At that point, you can really get into the meat of this presentation. And it's broken out into some very focused things. First of all, we always want to highlight the Sonance brand and where Sonance came from. So we put this slide up about designing to disappear, and it's a very much ubiquitous transition slide about how things go from conceptualization to a finished product. And that's one of the things I really like about this slide. We're going to make this available to anybody who's interested, and you can absolutely use any of this content for your own portfolios and outreach. We put in, you know, the founders of the company, and then we talk about some of the timelines of what has happened along the way with Sonance. Obviously, the first ever in-wall speaker, flush mount speakers at 2009, and then the historic acquisition of James Loudspeaker in 2019. We always lead with design, right? So we introduce product solutions like TrueFig, and then one of the ideal things about James Loudspeaker is the small aperture series product. And we're going to show you that product live and go into it more in depth in our second presentation to you folks today. And the other thing is that the whole idea about designing to disappear, we have a product called the Sonance Invisible series featuring motion flex technology. This is the epitome of everything we do to truly have an invisible solution that plays world-class audio. So we'll focus on those product solutions here for you in a little while. So just at the front of the presentation is just always some history. Who is this company, to give the audience some general knowledge on who the company is and where it's come from.
I would add, if this is a partner you've done a lot of business with already, and there's already a relationship and trust, I would skip it, right? We always put that segment in there up front to say, if this is a new potential source of business, they want to understand, who am I doing business with? Is this person brand new? Do they have some history? And if it's you presenting your company, you can tell that story. You can obviously, in this case, make it a little bit about our company history as well, that we're not a brand new manufacturer, that we're going to be around to support you and then their projects through the relationship with you. So keep that module based on who the audience is. It could be quick, or it could be something you take more time with.
It's good feedback. Very much so. If you have a partner that you're entrenched with, it's save more minutes on going into other more impactful things. This is what we want to try to get across the message during the presentation. If you're delivering this, or we're delivering this for you, is really to define what the luxury experience is. right? And we have some very meaningful slides, and there's a lot of very rich photography and even some videos in this presentation that support that. The second thing that I think is extremely important is how we draw the parallel between lighting design and audio design. I think everybody on this call will admit that lighting design is crucial to enhancing the overall luxury of the space, enhancing the look and feel, as well as the security of the space. And if you've been around us in Sonance for the last several years, we talk about how the right principles of lighting design are almost identical to audio design. And so
Jay,
we use
if you let me just jump in Spanish, because I think this is one of the most important things that you're going to be talking today. Jay nos está haciendo referencia, y muchos de los que ustedes que nos han acompañado en San Clemente, en las oficinas centrales de Sonance, Jay lo que está mencionando, yo lo quiero hacer este énfasis en español, es las analogías que tenemos entre el diseño de los sistemas de audio y un buen diseño de un sistema de iluminación, en donde lo que buscamos es una cobertura lo más completa posible con la iluminación, evitando puntos oscuros, evitando sombras. Entonces es una excelente analogía para cómo deberíamos nosotros de pensar en un diseño de un sistema de audio. Eso es lo que nos está compartiendo Jay en este momento. Jay, thank you. Back to you.
No problem. Interrupt anytime when you think it's necessary to get the point across. So we think it's really important to draw the parallel between lighting and audio. And even more so, we've got some content in this presentation about how to build technology into the architecture, which is meant to purely inspire the audience and inhibit them with ideas on the projects that they're working on and the products that we're going to be showing them through the presentation. And then lastly, you see this section about next steps. That's really about introducing yourself, the importance of you as a company being on the design team from conception to completion. And we really focus in on that towards the finish of this presentation. And so it's these four things that we're trying to drive across in this presentation that we feel gets the element of design to disappear and enforces the whole outreach idea, right, of burying these projects into the design of the product or project. So again, just to highlight a few things here, we really want to spend a few minutes getting the audience engaged about, luxury, what they think luxury is. And so we've created some content in this presentation that is beautiful, that has all the elements of luxury. But in the statement, what we're trying to drive here is that if you look at this space and you're sitting in this space, it's the feeling of being in the space, the experience, which is what defines luxury. When you're sitting in this room, there is a experience that you have, and that is how we define luxury. And so we create how to treat all of the elements that go into the project to make the end result of luxury important. And then we try to drive home that there is technology in every facet of these images that needs to be designed carefully, that enhances the luxury feeling. Any questions about luxury or how we're trying to define that? We think it's really important at the beginning of the presentation to help everybody be on the same page about defining the luxury experience.
I don't see any questions on the chat or in the question section. Any questions? ¿Alguien tiene una pregunta, por favor? Este es el momento de...
I would add that if we don't establish luxury early on, and it is subjective, right? So this is where engaging with the audience is important, but there are some, I think, key elements that we would say are universal. And as Jay showed you on our kind of table of contents, where we're heading is to draw parallels between lighting design and audio design. So we're introducing lighting as a part of luxury early in the discussion here. So if you feel comfortable with that idea, camp out there for a little bit. That materials design selection, if that's an architect, if that's a craftsman, understanding the materials is key. And then I think there's something to be said about whether it's lighting, whether it's materials, whether it's the physical architecture in a space. Anytime something is surprising, meaning if the lighting that's above the cove or the lighting that's back behind each wine bottle, if you see a big light and you see the effect of the light, it's not surprising. So it might be well lit, but it's when you don't see the light and you see the bottle glowing, it adds an element of surprise or of the unknown. And so if we can get folks to understand that parallel, then the audio message will play very, very well. So that should be the goal of that first section.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike.
Way to echo that, Mike. And then we create a couple of transition messages to get into the lighting design by that reinforcement of what we believe. When you effectively hide technology into the design while delivering exceptional performance, you will add magic to the luxury experience. We can all agree that if technology is not implemented, especially into a luxury space correctly, from a visual standpoint, from a performance standpoint, all it does is detract from that idea of luxury. And so this is the points we try to reinforce as we transition into why you should care about audio design. We've enforced this question to your customers. This is where you can keep your audience engaged. How many of you know about audio design? How many of you architects know why you should care about audio design? And so what we do is we talk about how the lifestyle of audio is set in certain spaces. Clearly what we drive in some of these slides is the visual impact of when these devices are installed, right? There is a visual impact.
The enthusiast is excited about this, but the architect, the designer, the builder, this is like, you guys are ruining my space, right? So it's not to say that two-channel audio is a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing. But when appealing to the correct audience, understanding what their pain points are up front, let's show some of the differences. So
we keep highlighting those ideas through here. But one of the things that we try to transition into, and this is an important area to get across to your customer, is that these slides right here really dictate that audio is very much important in these slides, but it's not the primary reason for the that the people in these rooms are enjoying audio. It's the supplemental support of audio that gives, you know, this joyful experience. And so this is why we need to drive home the importance of designing the audio into these purpose spaces like entertainment and living spaces.
Yeah.
Mike and Jay, we have a question from Francisco Soria in Venezuela. He's telling us, he's asking that in Venezuela, it's not the standard construction for use drywall in the walls. And most of them are solid blocks and masonry. So he's asking if how could we use the new Invisible series there, if there is any special infrastructure or backbox or something. What are your suggestions for this?
Yeah, great question. I think the opportunity there is to use the space savers early on in the planning phase. And then, of course, if there's a particular need for a mason box or something from a conduit standpoint, but by all means, any finished material up to 3 millimeters could be used into that space. So if we're selling the project based on aesthetics and design to disappear, of course, we want to make sure we can accommodate the different construction methods. Jay, anything to add from a physical standpoint?
Yeah, I think we'll show you some things in the next session. Invisible might not be the product of choice in that case. We use a product from James Loudspeaker called Small Aperture, which might be more effective to design in a space that's not built around drywall. So that might be an alternative way to go.
Sure, Francisco, we're going to be having next to this one a session with Jay also and Mike and Jason specifically on invisible series and James small aperture. So maybe you can have more info there. I'm gonna be posting the link for that one after we finish here.
This is an important message to drive across to the specifiers that are on your virtual call or in person, and that is the influence of audio on certain effects of both social, emotional, and then the well-being behind cognitive and physiological experiences. So Mike, you spent a lot of time putting this presentation together. You want to talk a little bit about these elements?
Yeah, this is just reading your audience. If you perceive your customer doesn't care about audio, this would be an attempt to give them a few options on why they possibly could care. If they already care, then this gets to be a just additional layer. But Jay mentioned earlier, the point of listening to music over breakfast is not to listen to the timbre of the guitar or the detail in her voice. The point is to interact with my family and have breakfast, and the music sets the mood of the room. And so the idea of an emotional benefit where the music is part of the experience, but it's secondary. So I would say read your audience and understand which of these 4 areas may mean the most to them and key in on that. But if your customer, if your audience is already interested, then this is extra. So it's a nice thing to have as a backup.
Yeah, these are things that we've never really pointed out so critically before in our outreach presentation. Our last outreach presentation was from 2012, so there's been so much research done in some of these areas, but especially in the areas of wellness. I think there are so many accounts on this call that are involved in wellness that this absolutely subscribes to supporting that idea of all those things that are important and relative around wellness, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm keeping an eye on our time here. This is where we really try to transition audio into the relationship with lighting design and what the purpose of audio is in these spaces, right? It's trying to get the family to really enjoy audio and not have it detract from the overall look or experience in the space. And then what we try to do is reinforce what the basic principles of lighting design are on its effect on luxury. It's designed for both function and emotion, unique and surprising ways when it's applied correctly. We use the words comfortable and balanced, right? You guys have heard us use those words. And then obviously lighting delivers drama from hidden places. The places where we see lights and lighting systems positioned now are just amazing, and how they cast the effects of light is definitely something that applies to the principles of luxury. So we reinforce that in this series of this presentation, and what we've done is we've just augmented it with beautiful lighting shots that I think could be translated to homes that could be anywhere in the world, right? We try to be very agnostic and purposeful on showing the value of unbelievable lighting design and the care into the lighting system in each of these lifestyle shots. Here's a good one on unique and surprising ways. This is in Rafael's apartment in Mexico City, just a beautiful space that accentuates lighting. So thank you for generating that photo, Rafa. And then look how it's applied throughout the space. So we're really trying to keep the audience interested at this point and transitioning how the importance of lighting design goes from inside to outside, with also vertical transitions that are implemented into the space.
Jay, I'll add something there. I think you're coming up on a, this photo illustrates minimal lighting and yet even balance coverage. And so once you make that point on lighting, there's obviously a lot of slides we're skipping over, and there's a lot more that we won't get a chance to go through each one of them. But one of the key points to make is once you show these unique and surprising, even balanced, beautiful shots, there's a video embedded into this presentation that makes the analogy visually that we've been saying for years, which is this room is a great example. We don't see two giant spotlights in the room where it would be too bright in one area and not well lit in other areas, but rather this idea of evenly applied. If someone can grasp that concept and then we can apply it to audio, this is the reason that we don't present, here's this 20-inch subwoofer on one side of the room, and here's another large speaker on the other side, but rather we can have this idea of even balanced audio coverage that complements even balanced lighting coverage. That should be your final goal, to land on that idea as you get to this point in the presentation. So I don't know that we'll have time to watch the video, Jay, but when we share this link, that will definitely help set up the benefit of what we're trying to communicate there.
Yeah, good call out there, Mike. I did just post, Rodolfo, if you can share with the audience the YouTube channels for Sonance and James Loudspeaker. Those will have very focused segments and chapters on lifestyle shots, in addition to some of the product things people might be looking for.
Yeah.
So once we've established the important things around lighting design and the wow factor, we try to use that into resulting in how audio design is absolutely very important. We talk about this a lot, and you've probably heard me speak about it a lot, is right. Achieving balanced coverage is critical to the experience, right? Having multiple points of audio. And in order to do that correctly, you need to design it into the project early on. In this presentation is one of the videos that I think just kind of really put us on the map, which is this video called Design to Disappear. This is on our YouTube channel. This illustrates how audio completely covers the space. And we encourage you to use these videos in your presentations, use them on your websites, and use it in your outreach to your customers, whether they're end users, dealers, or trade partners. So we try to define on the fact that there's audio throughout these spaces and it needs to be designed into the space. Furthermore, this is where we try to get into the nuts and bolts of the presentation by matching aesthetics, right? We've drawn the conclusion around where all lighting needs to go into the job. Well, there are speaker products from Sonance and James that match other lighting devices, and being able to educate the audience on that's really important. Matching the correct size and the correct shape up with the other devices in the ceiling. This is why you're driving the impression home to your audience that audio design is critical. I'm going to just launch this presentation real quick, but this is a great presentation that we use to establish the types of material so that you can see the different types of trims.
And while Jay clicks through these, I'll just reiterate, we touched on it when we started, but in person, these physical samples are so helpful to show this very thing. Virtually, I think this presentation is going to tee up the idea in a nice, meaningful way, but just know that these are still helpful as a leave behind, or maybe you send it in afterwards as a thank you gift, if this is an influencer that can really help your business. So it's nice to see all the different finishes kind of illustrated and animated on the screen here.
Yeah, this is a keynote deck that we put together that you could launch from your iPad while you're in person, or sending it to your clients in a small video, or your trade partners, giving them the capability to have inspiration on how they do have choices on how things are installed, into this case, ceilings. I just back out of the presentation so that we can continue to highlight over things. So I know we're getting near to the end of our time here. The other thing that we focus in on is documentation, and that's speaking to how designing lighting and audio together on the plan set. And so just know we provide examples on how to mirror those together and how to get the message of documentation across to your clients. And I know companies like Polaris can help guide you and direct you to types of services. We offer services to help with that in terms of designing the system to be embedded into the project correctly through our design services team. And if you do this, the message that we send in this presentation is if documentation and planning and preparation is there, the result is that you have even lighting and audio throughout the entire presentation. So that's how we try to create and connect the dots between the importance of audio design as it relates to the project, and that the principles and ideals behind good audio design are mirrored from lighting design. So those are some of the things that we point into here. Rodolfo, do you have anything to add about lighting design or any of the design things that you guys come across as a representative firm in Latin America?
Yeah, thank you, Jay. I'm gonna jump in Spanish. Es increíble lo que pues las analogías que nos muestra Jay y cómo lo hemos visto, cómo ha crecido. Lo platicábamos en uno de los foros anteriores también. Muchas de las empresas que iniciaron con la parte de audio y video se han ido poco a poco metiendo la iluminación, y vemos que son complementos en esta industria realmente para generar, ya no solo es crear todo un estilo de vida con sus clientes, que va de la mano la parte de la iluminación, que se integra a la arquitectura, al diseño de interiores, y la parte de la tecnología en audio y video, que pues como lo vemos, Sonance nos presenta unas excelentes opciones para poderlo algo, como lo decíamos al inicio, no que se mezcle, sino que desaparezca totalmente dentro de la tecnología. Entonces, Sonance pone a las órdenes todo un aparato de diseño y un apoyo de diseño, tanto interno de Sonance como con sus amigos de PolarisControls. Cuentan con nosotros para poder hacer el mejor diseño de acuerdo a sus necesidades. Contáctenos, estamos para ayudarles. Thank you, Jay. Back to you. There's no more questions so far. Maybe in the next session, there are going to be more product questions regarding the Visual Series and James.
Sure, no problem. This next section of the presentation, what we're simply trying to do is show the importance of designing the product into the space, especially if they're permanent items or transitional items. You know, a transitional item is a good example is the TV. We know that most clients will probably change that television out as possibly as 1 to 2 years after they put in a new TV. And so those things need to be considered into the design and brought up with the client as they live in the home over the course of 10 or 20 years. The other thing that we do is we just simply try to draw out how these products look on their own, and that there needs to be careful thought of how they're designed into the space, because they may have the different color of white, they may have different types of industrial design, which changes the way they cast shadows. And so we just try to drive home some of that ugliness, if you will, in the project to bring out areas that needs to be more thoughtful in terms of what's actually going to be placed here and how should it look inevitably. So we just go over things like discrete venting solutions, flush mount solutions, detailed finishes, and point out how some of the slides can result into really good looking projects if the technology is considered correctly well enough in advance of the construction timeline.
Yeah, I think if you can leave your audience with a good idea of what's possible, the hope is that if they didn't know that was possible before, now they have something to aspire toward, and then it gives you an opportunity to invite them to get you involved early and to get the planning started, to get the design piece started. I think if the design community thinks of our industry as the stereo trade, then our influence is not correct on the job, but rather if we're part of the design team and we're considering materials and finishes, then the value is much more than a speaker or a television, but you're influencing the look of the space. So that's the goal of the presentation for sure, and it gives you an opportunity to get out and meet various, influencers and people that can really help move the business forward.
It's a good kind of roundup for that. I think, we insert this belief statement through several parts of the presentation. And finally, the last part of this presentation is basically defining to the audience why you should be involved. Hiding technology starts early in the project. All these slides are doing at the end is just reinforcing the fact with your audience that they need to have you involved in the project as soon as possible. You should have an equal footprint on the design team from conception, considering all the technology that's going into people's homes. So we also have videos built into these presentations. We know that some of you have limited bandwidth on the other end, so we won't play them. And know that in the presentation, we've given careful thought to add the keywords in the slide to show, here's what the meaning or the words that are designed to be presented and talked to in this presentation. So that's really the wrap up of our continuing education unit, and we're happy to share that and engage with you to outreach to your clients. We think it's fundamentally important, especially now more than ever with the amount of technology going into your projects, as well as just the opportunity to educate everybody that's in that path. Mike, do you have any feedback on how it's been received so far? It's been out about 6.5 months, 7 months, I think.
Yeah, I think what I just said is that key is just providing an on-ramp to get out and build your network of folks in the design world. So where you see an architect doing a great job, either referring you work where technology is not being emphasized, or if there's someone you want to work with, someone you want to target, I think this might be the most intriguing way to start a relationship rather than to go and force speaker specifications or some technology details around a television. Speak the language and highlight the values that they care about, and I think you'll find the right audience.
Great, guys. Thank you very much. We have to move to the next session. So thank you very much. We can talk a little bit more of the solutions there. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jay. See you in a few minutes.
Okay.
Señores, nos vemos en la siguiente sesión. Gracias por su tiempo.